I'm Julie Legg, author of The Missing Piece and diagnosed with ADHD at 52.
And I'm Gel Legg, diagnosed at 55.
Welcome back to ADH Difference. In this episode, we'll be talking about hypersensitivity. Now, HSP, a highly sensitive person, is not a disorder in itself, but it is a common attribute for people with ADHD. So we're talking about sensory overload with sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So that's what we'll be chatting about today.
Awesome. So let's start with sight, shall we?
Let's.
You go first.
Well, I tend to be acutely aware of the weird and wonderful. So I'm more inclined I'm short-sighted. Yeah, so I wear glasses for driving or watching television. But without my glasses on, which is most of the day, I will actually see the oddities in my sight of vision. Is that my view? So I'll be seeing the weird and wonderful bits. My eyes are going to be drawn to a little ladybird on a twig as opposed to the beautiful scenery around me. Look, that's not sensory overload. That was just a little interest thing from my point of view. You probably have more of an overload when it comes to sight.
So with each of these, the five senses, my understanding, and I'm sure someone out there will correct me if I'm wrong, is that for a given set of ears, eyes, and nervous system that reacts the same, it is how we process those sensory signals in our mind that makes us perhaps different to neurotypical people. And so in our case, we're always concerned with how our brains are wired and how they react or process information, react and so forth, but process information. So for given two people that have the same set of eyes, for instance, and now Julie, you're talking about being short-sighted. Mm-hmm. Okay, but you see, that raises an interesting sort of memory for me when I was studying a bit of psychology a long time ago, and how our eyes work and how we can only ever truly focus on about 1 or 2% of our vision in one space at any time. And it's constantly moving around because the light hits the wee little receptacles, what they're called, there's the little retina. Is that the thing at the back? There's little cells that respond to that light and then transfer that information to be processed in the brain. Now, there are heaps of them, and if you just keep looking in one place, they get tired, and so they're designed to keep moving around. You're not really aware that you're moving around, but something like 99% of our vision is peripheral vision, even though you think it isn't just the stuff at the side. It's actually what's in front of you. Your brain is looking for a trigger, something that's changed. Now, I would suggest to you, and I'm not a scientist or a doctor, that if you're not in a distance able to focus on something, your brain's learned to perhaps be more sensitive to the peripheral stuff going on. And you do tend to notice things changing. A bird that flutters in the bush more.
Yes, that's probably more my inability to focus or hold attention on something else. So I'm not getting a sensory overload with that. But that's just my little thing about sight. But you have quite a strong overwhelm when it comes to...
Yeah, one or two things. I think my number one is what I believe is called, they're called datum lines. It's an engineering term for how things lines are vertical, horizontal, or 3 dimensions, how they intersect and how they need to be straight or at certain angles. So if I'm looking at a fence that I put up a couple of years ago that it sort of kind of twisted itself slightly, it's not perfectly vertical, which happens to be slightly behind the edge of our old house, which was moved some 20 years ago. It's an 100-year-old house, and it's got a part that's not vertical. Now, every house should be vertical. You don't have wonky houses. You shouldn't do, unless perhaps you have a Tudor house from 1600s. And every day I have to look at this, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it just drives me nuts. I can see if a picture's not straight. I can see if it's slightly twisted, and as I walk around, I'll move it.
And we're talking a millimetre.
Just a small amount.
It's so tiny.
Yeah. And I'm not so sure that I didn't improve it because I'll move it and I'll walk back past again and go, oh, it's twisted the other way now. And it drives me nuts. It really does. My brain has got this need for everything to be square and line up. And be
maybe orderly.
Orderly, yes.
Maybe
orderly.
because your brain isn't always orderly. At least you want something in your life to look straight and linear.
Yeah, I can't explain why it's like it. I maybe it comes from this engineering mind I've had after a lifetime of doing engineering in one form or another, when things should be straight and square or the angle prescribed, and they need to be correct. And if they're imbalanced or not right, and that can extend to the aesthetics in things. If I see a car that just seems disproportionate, the proportions are wrong, it just doesn't seem like a design that feels very human, then I get a real my brain has a real reaction to that. It's an ugly car. And I see another car that's beautifully proportioned. They tend to be older ones. And then I get a lovely sense of, oh, that's really nice. And so it's an environmental thing. It's for me with sight, it's there all the time and everywhere.
I want to move on to sound, actually, because I think that's fun. Now, 2 sets of ears. We both have ADHD. Now, my hearing is really attuned to high-pitched sounds. And it'll be as clear as day to me. It'll be this high-pitched shrieking or whining, and I'll be getting up from the breakfast table saying, oh, what is that noise? And Joel will say, no, I can't hear a thing. Or I can hear someone calling out a pet's name in the distance, and I can really tune in and make out every word. And we're talking, this is 100 metres away. But I have this ability, particularly with higher levels. But you can't hear them, but you're really attuned to
the low ones,
extra low levels. Yeah,
I used to hear the high ones a long time ago, and as a music producer, you think, well, it can't be much of a producer if it can't hear the high frequencies. Well, we're talking the stuff up around 17 kilohertz, 18 kilohertz, or we're talking about very small levels of sound, which I don't have the sensitivity for high up. And it's very common in music producers, and so that it doesn't preclude us from still being able to produce music. But now, I love listening to music, of course, and my 2 favorite forms of music is pretty full-on English punk music, and I love classical music. So they appear to be complete opposites, but they're not. They're both very emotional, and they stir all sorts of endorphins in me. I was for a long time, about 20 years ago, I did a lot of dance music, trance in particular, produced a lot of that, and loved doing it. Found that very stirring, emotional. But now, if I hear a bass drum, just that repetitive boom, 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 whether it's from a car or a distant neighbor, and it can be quite a distant neighbor sometimes, it drives me to distraction. That constant pattern of that simple beat absolutely drives me mad. I think the problem is, because I can't hear the rest of the music, it's only one component of it. And that really drives me mad. So there's a hypersensitivity to something I shouldn't be sensitive to because I'm a musician.
And again, it's something not within your control. You will, to the point, say, I just can't do anything because of the bass drum. And we live in the country, and our neighbours are far, far away. But on a still evening, we can hear noises from
9-10 kilometres.
Yeah, like the train, for example. That's nowhere near us, and we can hear that rumbling through.
I don't mind the train.
No, neither do I.
No, because it's not a repetitive sound. The train is a long, drawn-out sound as it takes a while to go past.
Yes.
But it's not that repetitive sound, and it's the hypersensitivity. Okay, so I think I touched on it earlier. Let's get this clear, that it's our ears and our eyes can have different degrees of sensitivity, but ultimately we're talking ADHD, and we're talking about how our ADHD brains process information. We're wired differently. Yes. So what may not bother someone else may very much bother us. Or you, and we're not all the same, and so we all have different triggers,
we do.
They will amplify how much they bother us, I think, because our ADHD brains and with the way we're wired, I really genuinely feel that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is, it's just a really interesting subject matter. You know, it's not one of the criteria in the DSM being hypersensitivity. Yeah, hypersensitive. That's not on the list, but it is again a common attribute. For me, again, living in the country, I'll hear a rooster in the distance, and it doesn't bother me at all. At all.
Actually, I like the sound of roosters. Yeah. It's cool.
However, I'll hear a truck rumble past, and hearing it go, you know, accelerating or engine braking or rumble through, and I'll get quite irrationally upset that this truck is disturbing my peace and quiet. And it's hardly peace and quiet in the country, is it? I mean, you've got birds squabbling, and you've got the occasional dairy cow mooing, and there's always something going on.
That's a good point. If you have ADHD and you think, right, I've got to get out of the city because the noises just drive me to distraction, there's too much sensory overload, just be wary. If you move to the countryside, it's actually very similar. There's a lot of sensory overload. And in some ways, we've both lived in cities and towns, and you hear the traffic constantly. The trucks can be quite regular, and they don't bother you quite so much in that situation as here, where they're far more sporadic.
So really, it's the sounds of nature. It kind of, we expect them to be then, so therefore that doesn't bother us. But it's the intrusiveness, perhaps, of that truck rumbling by when we're not used to that sound being in our space, that's a bit over the top.
Hypersensitivity is also, I think, very much linked to experiences, your life story. So something may have happened in your life or be a process of a time in your life when sounds and various things we'll talk about with different senses trigger those memories from that time, and you're trying to get away from them.
Yeah, it could be a siren, for example, might be triggering. Yes, very interesting. Now, thunderstorms. I love thunderstorms. I love heavy rain, and I love the claps of thunder and lightning, and love it.
I think the more violent the storm, the better.
Yeah, I find it
Absolutely
so
adore it.
exciting. That does not personally overwhelm us at all.
No.
As
we go through this, the other thing I should say before I forget is, if as ADHD, as perhaps talking to you as ADHD, as some we all agree with, some you won't. It's not really important what we agree that is awful or not. Yep. That's not the point. I think what I would like to sort of mention a couple of times through this is that if you're listening to this and you're trying to understand someone with ADHD, and they seem to have an irrational reaction to any of these senses, these stimuli coming through the senses, it may be down to how their brain processes that information. So it may be. It's not guaranteed to be, but a little understanding can actually go a long way to making a better relationship with someone with ADHD.
Yes.
I need peace and quiet when I want it, and I want a lot of noise when I want to make a lot of noise, and I make a lot of noise, whether it's music or power tools. So when someone else's noise is intruding on my space, it drives me. It triggers such a fight or flight thing. I want to go and, just be really angry with them, or move house, sell the house now. I can't live next door to this anymore. And it's not every noise you think. I don't mind tractors. I know, but I don't mind a tractor driving past when it's, putting lime on the field. I don't mind cows mooing and bulls in the middle of the night crying out, because that's part of living in the country.
But you don't like dogs barking.
No, I don't, because I'm sorry, guys, I don't really like dogs a great deal. So I don't like dogs barking. I've got a thing for tractors, but I don't mind tractors because we live in the country. It's an industrial estate, really, isn't it? Okay, so the taste. No, that's more you, I think, on that front.
It is. It is. I'm. We're pretty good with taste. We've got a really a wide range.
Eclectic, I think.
I was going to say eclectic, but a wide range of like for foods. Yeah, we'll eat. We'll eat anything. So in a way, sometimes we might need to skip past the taste bit but then go on to texture, and
I want to do the tablets.
I know, but I was going to go.
Join that with
Yeah,
texture.
I was.
Fair enough.
I'm shocking at taking medication, and one of the reasons why we saw a psychologist rather than a psychiatrist for our diagnosis, because I really struggle taking medication. Yes, I might forget to take them. Actually, I do often. But actually, it's the taste and the texture of the meds. I was shocking as a child, and I still continue to do bad.
You'll literally be sick if you don't.
Yeah.
If you sense that tablet at all.
If
and then you only have to take it again, then, don't you? Because you don't know if you've taken it.
That's terrible. So there's a really bad one, which is an antihistamine for hay fever. Now that dissolves on your tongue instantly. So it normally takes me a little while to swallow medication because I'm a problem child. But once it starts dissolving, it attaches to my taste buds. And I know I'll have that horrible taste of antihistamine there for ages. And then the texture as it dissolves starts getting a bit grainy. And if I can't swallow it quickly, I will gag and I will throw up. Which is stupid. I'm 50.
It is irrational.
I'm 54.
It is irrational, but I respect it, and I'm, I don't always respond as kindly as I should because it's a teeny little thing.
It's
not even the size of an M&M or Smartie.
As a kid, Dad had identified, my father identified that I had this problem, and so he'd crush tablets up. And put them in a teaspoon of honey. And to this day, I don't particularly like honey either. I think that's a taste thing.
I'm sure we used to crush tablets up for cats.
Yeah.
Aww.
Oh, I know. It probably didn't work for them either.
I'm going to skip that tasting because I honestly can't think of anything, really.
No, so on to touch or texture. So I'll have the talking stick for a minute.
Yep.
So we'll talk about the texture of the meds that I can't cope with. The texture of clothing is a big thing for me too. Anything that's scratchy or any clothing tags still attached that are quite harsh and rub on the back of my neck, chop them off straight away because they're just going to be annoying. And so that'll dictate what clothing I buy, really. Anything too woolly, I know will have a scratchy element, so they're off the list. But for me, the major one was when I got a tattoo several years ago. Now, I know tattoos hurt. That's the whole point. At the end of the day, you're being poked and prodded thousands of times with a needle, putting foreign substances into your skin. Yes, of course, that hurts, I know. But I had quite a colourful tattoo. Lots of colours, lots of shading, very clever guy. Who did that. However, it was the wiping away of the liquids, which is blood pretty much, and excess ink, repetitively over the same space was excruciating. And, the tattooist had a wry smile on his face going, wiping this away is more painful than actually the tattooing itself. And I said, yes. So we had to actually stop every couple of hours, and I just needed to go outside and take some fresh air and convince myself that I've started it, I've got to finish it now, and to go back in. But it was excruciating, and I have a really high pain threshold. Goodness me.
That's 3 children.
Yeah, and 2 without drugs. Anyway, so I can handle those things. But this, no, it took me over the edge big time. And the other texture that I don't like, or the feeling I don't like, is wet swimming togs. Now, dry swimming togs, that's fine if you're at the beach, for example. But as soon as you're actually in the water or in a spa pool, and you remove yourself from the environment, they're clammy. They stick to you, and they're wet, and they're cold, and they're horrible. So we ditched our swimming togs, didn't we?
For the spa, yeah.
For the spa, it's just like no need for that. Carry on. No.
Horrible. And I share that. I share that entirely. So really, yeah, it's quite a high sort of triggery thing on the skin sensitivity, isn't it? And I
was going to say, we're really tactile people. We hold hands all the time, even in bed, which is cute or crazy. I don't know what it is. And holding hands is really nice. It's really nice. But we need to hold hands a certain way. Otherwise, I'll rearrange the hand movements, make sure that I'm most comfortable. But rubbing my shoulder. After about 4 strokes, I'll be shaking.
I'm just thinking
shaking the hand off. Yeah. And isn't that weird?
Yeah.
The darling person that I love, yet just that repetitive touch.
But yeah, like you said, we're very sensory. We love to hug people. Hello, hug them, goodbye. We're very tactile.
Yes.
We're not all standoffish with hugging and so forth.
Until we're not. Until I guess that, again, this is sensory overload. And it can have a short wick, really.
I think now I'm sort of really thinking about it, get my head into the space of these sensory overloads. I would reasonably say, I think it would be reasonable for someone who wasn't perhaps ADHD. So, well, just, you need to chill a bit, be more accommodating. Just, it's none of these things are life-threatening. They're not particularly that big a deal. Well, they are a big deal for us. They're a huge deal. It's a fight or flight reaction a lot of the time.
Yes.
You could argue, is that almost like childish? I don't know. But no, I think it's our brains they take this sensory information and they churn it around and around and around and they amplify it and they make it this total focus. And it's like, do something about it now. Yeah?
Yes. I just thought
with that.
No. With that, food, it's not necessarily the taste, but it's the texture. And you don't like oysters.
Oh, no.
And we don't need to describe how it is for you, because a lot of people don't like oysters for the same reason. I don't like surprises. I don't like, for example, if I'm in a foreign country and I'm eating some food that I think's nice and I bite into it and it explodes, if you know what I mean. And I will say baby octopus, which I don't like. I don't eat that again, but I did once and that was enough. But that kind of exploded, and that's it. No, too much for me.
Oh, you had tequila, the worm.
Yeah. And that's the reason. Yeah, the worm. Oh,
that's
my
your
gosh.
association.
Yeah, I chewed the worm. You should never chew worms. But funnily enough too, we're also hypersensitive to situations like we don't like surprises either. Now, we're not talking about senses here, but the things is like we want to know what's happening. We don't like surprise. That's out of our control as well, or being tickled, or you know what I mean. It's just
yeah. Oh, there's another one. People who say. Are you there? I'll call you in 10 minutes. I've got something important to tell you. Well, couldn't you just tell me now if it's important? Now I've got to wait 10 minutes for it. Is that impatience? Maybe that's impatience.
And like many of traits of ADHD, and again, this isn't a trait. This is just an attribute that's common for ADHDers. But there's lots of crossover. And we know we're hypersensitive, for example, to criticism. And again, that is another trait, but you were talking about negative people too, and that's sometimes that can be.
Hold that thought on the criticism one. Now that doesn't, for us, and we definitely can't speak for everyone else, but for us, that doesn't make us the kind of people you need to wrap up in cotton wool when it comes to criticism. It's just for me, it's how I process that. So if I know I'm not very good at something and I want to get better at it and work out what I've done wrong, I go find an expert and I say to them, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing here. I'm a bit rubbish at this. I'm obviously making a complete hash of it. Can you help me out with some tips? The best thing people love, if they're good at something, they love to tell you they're good at it. I learned this years ago. It was a good tip I learned when I was a young man, and so they'll come back and they'll share hopefully what they know, and you take it on board. Or you've done that wrong. No, you shouldn't start like that. Start here. I'm fine with that criticism because I know I'm a bit rubbish at it. That's fine. And yeah, no problem. But if I think I'm quite good at something, and it's generally going to be art, isn't it, or music or something, and then I don't care what someone else thinks. If they says, "Oh, I think you could have done this," "Oh, well, that's not that good," it's like, doesn't matter. It's not your song. It's my song. I did it my way for me, and you either like it or you don't. So on the artistic side, I think we can be quite sensitive. And I don't seek criticism of my music because it's only someone's opinion. But on something practical that has a right and wrong way of doing it, maybe a wee building project or something like that, then I'm quite happy to be criticised if I've done it wrong because I know what's right and what's wrong in something that's not perhaps so artistic.
Okay, so we're talking about being hypersensitive. So when are you hypersensitive to criticism?
When it's unjust and when it's irrelevant and when I don't learn anything from it. If I learn something from it and if I go, "Oh, blimey, you've got a point there," or it might be some coding I've done wrong. It's like, "Oh, fair go." I'll take that one on the chin and move forward. But if it's just someone's opinion, I'm hypersensitive to that. It's like, no, and another no. not required, I guess, too, if someone's hypercritical of your opinion on something, that's not necessary. I'm not ever hypercritical on someone else's opinion. I'd rather say we've got different opinions on some subject matter. It could be politics, or it doesn't matter what it is, or any subject, and say, okay, but let's talk about it. Let's nut it out and see if we can each learn something. And with someone I'm engaging with who's like that, we generally find some common ground at the end, and it's all just fine. And if we're still not poles apart.
Yeah. And some subject matters you're very well read on, and you have you spent years and years and years studying it.
Oh, yes.
And so to be criticised for an
opinion based on a lot of understanding from someone I believe hasn't got that understanding, that can actually stay with me forever, that one.
But we're talking about more irrational responses to something like that, more drastic, I guess. I want to talk about negativity and negative people.
Yeah.
And we are both really hypersensitive to that. And whether it's it's a combination of all sorts. It's the energy that they're emitting. It's the tone of their voice when they're really negative and they're really grumpy and nothing, it's just, where's the joy? Come on, find some joy there. It can really drag, I suppose it's the energy, isn't it? It can really drag us down big time. And we tend to match energy levels of other people. And so if they're quiet, we'll probably be quiet to match them. But it doesn't do us any good because that's not our natural state necessarily.
Now tell me, a wise ADHD author, is empathy a strong aspect of ADHD? There you go.
Yes.
But I've always felt and said to people of myself that I'm very empathetic. So if you start telling me about that time you broke your leg and describing in detail what happened and the pain and all the stuff, I would just stop right there because I can feel that pain. I'm empathetic to that situation you're in. And yes, I can be empathetic to people going through a difficult patch with something when they're previously generally upbeat and got a good grip of life. When something goes wrong, then yes, we're fantastic listeners and got lots of love to give. But because of that empathy and how, as you just said, we absorb or react or feel the energy around people and in a room. Yeah, if someone walks into our space who's very negative and just is moaning and complaining, it can drain us in 5 minutes flat.
Yes. And again, sensory overload to that.
Yes.
We're likely to just put up a wall going, no, I can't let you into my space because I know this is going to just go downhill really quickly.
Now, I do call that sensory overload because I call that negative sensory overload. It's okay. I understand most people say, well, look, sensory overload is, say, someone comes into our space and we've met plenty of people who are so full of energy. It's amazing. They light the room up and we just buzz and spark. we can take 2 or 3 hours of that,
Yes,
and then
we
we're
can.
completely worn out and we have to withdraw. But we give them a hug and thank them for their energy. It's fantastic. But I do believe the opposite can have the same effect.
Yes.
And it generally, and the negative one is quicker.
Oh, yeah, I guess
It's
too.
overloading our negative sensories. Our reactives are shutting down. It's overloading our masking and all that stuff.
Yes. Now, I said at times we'll be irrational and actually put up a wall quite quickly with negative people. But then, because we walk in contradictions, we'll also could want to try and uplift them. And so we'll be extra positive to try and counterbalance their extra negativeness. And we can burn ourselves up really quickly because our battery, they're draining our battery very, very quickly. And they can leave after an hour feeling so much better for themselves. Thank you, you've really helped me out and I'm feeling really positive now. Thank you. They can walk away happy and we're left on empty, really. And so we just need time out to recharge ourselves.
How many times do we say that person's just spent the last 2 hours talking at us?
Yeah.
To us, not with us. Did they ask a single question? Did they learn? What did they learn about us? Nothing.
I know.
Wow.
I know. And we're hypersensitive about that too because it happens all the time.
Well, that's true. I mean, as you can see, we're quite open about chatting. We're an open book, our world, but yeah, we're very sensitive. That's hypersensitivity, yes.
Yes, there are not just energy, but I think would this fall under sight? So we feel the energy, but also we can see body language. And what disturbs me is if words are coming out of someone's mouth, but their body language doesn't match it.
Yes.
I get quite confused and I need to try and work out what the heck's going on. So, so their body language, arms crossed, no smile, but they're saying some quite positive words. I treat that with much
suspicion.
I
just sort of, another one I'm very I'm hypersensitive to is people who just talk loudly, far too loudly. It comes across as this, that there's no dynamic to it.
Or a monotone voice and everything like that. Oh, monotone and loud together. No, that's the worst.
You know, someone talking at you, even for 5 minutes, is like listening to a song that has no dynamics. It's like, it just stop. And this hypersensitivity, sometimes it can take a very long time. It doesn't just happen that split second. It can build up over weeks, then months, and sometimes years. And then one day you suddenly crack and go, I can't take a single minute of this anymore. And then that's when we appear to be irrational because it's built up and up and we mask, we put up with it and then bam, it's gone. That's it. No more.
Again, throw confrontation into the mix. So what you're talking about is over time when things may annoy us about a certain person or a situation and we don't address it because we're masking and we're trying not to have that confrontation because we know the odds are we're going to fight or flight. Fighting, we might say something that we regret. Flighting, we don't actually get to say what we want to say and we can feel unheard. And so over time, it's that putting issues under the rug and then one day you trip up over this huge mound.
Well, that hypersensitivity goes nuclear.
Yeah, it does, eh?
It does, eh? Yeah, it does. I'm not proud of it, but it's just...
So I guess being diagnosed with ADHD, what is quite nice is that we can look at these situations and go, oh, that makes sense. Again, it's not a trait according to the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Being a highly sensitive person isn't a disorder, but again, it's an attribute that's common with people with ADHD. So to look back at those instances and go, I'm not alone in that, is quite nice.
Yeah, and as I said toward the beginning this, I think perhaps with this episode more than any so far, this one might be quite hopefully useful for someone living with someone with ADHD or parenting someone with ADHD.
Yeah, things like yes, if you were to observe them and the radio's too loud and it's literally turn it off, or Charlie's playing his music too loud in the bedroom. It can be quite irrational, but it's enough really to trigger.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but I can think what happens if you drop a glass on. We've got in the kitchen on the floor. It's a tile floor, so anything drops smashes. And my instant reaction is, no. It's like, well, that's irrational and stupid. Why? Well, because A, it's a big, horrible noise that's just happened. B, now I've got to help clear it up. But number one reason, everything has to stand still because there's now shards of glass everywhere.
Oh,
and if you stand in that glass, then we have to go to hospital.
And D, it was probably me that dropped it in the first instance. I drop everything.
It's not about the glass. There's nothing of any value. And if it was, it wouldn't matter. It's about getting a piece of glass in our foot. We're now frozen in time. And we can't, who can move? Who can get to the broom? So, that means, what is the hypersensitivity there? It isn't the noise initially. It is the instant recognition that we have a wee emergency to deal with. It's the hypersensitivity to the change in the plan of what was happening. We were just about to have breakfast and I had a few things organised today. In that split second, has my world now changed? Has my world mean that for the next 6 hours I've got to sit in A&E getting a piece of glass out, and it's happened? Remember the time we dropped the secateurs on your toe? It was ridiculous. So there's a hypersensitivity to losing control and having the day turned upside down. That's a hypersensitivity to, I wouldn't even say it's always necessarily having routine taken away. It's just I had plans for that day. And so it's a big cognitive ADHD brain imagining the whole world coming to an end. Yeah.
As you know, I've written a book. I spoke to lots of women, also diagnosed as adults, to help share their story to provide balance. And when it comes to hypersensitivity, it was quite interesting. Some liked large crowds. For example, if they went to a concert, you've got loud music, you've got lots and lots of people. If they were anonymous in that crowd, they found it as pleasurable as being by themselves. And in a really positive way, they could go there and really enjoy it. So crowds didn't overwhelm them. Yet if they were in a concert in their local town where they weren't anonymous because everyone knew them, they'd really dislike that, and they'd be overwhelmed by familiar faces, by potentially of being spoken to when they just wanted to enjoy the music. It's quite interesting. Walking contradiction. We can be everything, can't we?
It's almost, yeah. I mean, I'm wondering there, it's a bit philosophical, but a hypersensitivity to expected outcomes. So, for instance, we used to go camping a lot. We had a regular campsite. We had lots of friends there. And if we turned up on nice summer's days to spend a night or two there, and there was no one else, it was really quiet. That was the expected outcome, is there'd be lots of our friends there, and we could say hello to them and have a really good time.
Friends?
Okay, I see what you did there. Acquaintances. Yeah, they were
acquaintances.
Yeah, they were acquaintances. Yeah. Or actually, really, a lot of the time, there were strangers. It was just lots of new faces to say hello to. Yes. And that made the reason we chose to go from our little isolated rural space into a campsite where there might be, say, 100 people, is there's a chance to engage, with energy for 24 hours and then come home and back into our space. Conversely, going into a shopping space where I need to buy something and there's no car parks and there's thousands of people, no, I can't do that because I hate that. But if I go there and I find it's empty, then the same task is fine. It's great, quite enjoyable. So I think it's all to do with expected outcomes, hypersensitive to what you may or may not think is going to happen.
Yeah, but we don't do Christmas presents anymore. But if I said Christmas Eve shopping, no, we know it's going to be chaos, and it is. So we just don't do it anymore.
No.
But that's our expected outcome is the same. It doesn't make it any worse. You've got people with bags and people screaming and car parks and noises and loudspeakers and all sorts of things. It's not a good mix, is it?
No. Look at everything. It all comes down to how our brains process the stimuli. And that's what we've hypersensitivity. We're just a constant, well, every living creature has a constant stream of stimuli. And 98% of what comes into us is designed to keep us alive. What's that sound? What's that sound? Do I need to move? Do I need to run? Is that a lion? You know, I have to go faster to catch dinner. It's like we are literally, everything we do is about surviving. And then there's this small stream of important information, and then this big computer in between our ears then processes it all. And that's where ADHD has an interesting space with hypersensitivity, I think, is how we process that stimuli in our environment. And, you know, if neurodiversity isn't about environment and reaction to it and living in it, and stimuli, if that lot it isn't neurodiversity and a relationship between neurotypical and neurodiversity, then I almost don't know what is. It is a funny one that it's not, part of the DSM, as you say, but it actually, I think, can be quite a big thing for a lot of people with ADHD. Yeah. And it can really put them out of sorts with people, their work colleagues, their family and people around them.
Yeah, and it's like, they get so upset over the littlest things.
Yeah.
HSP, highly sensitive person.
Yeah, particularly in a work environment when everyone else is fine. So what's your problem? That's why I need to work in this office on my own. Well, you can't. You know, look at where you are in the pecking order. You don't get an office. But I need to work in the office where I don't have all the stimuli. I'm sensitive to the noise. What makes you different?
Noise cancelling headphones.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. And that was us on hypersensitivity.